All right, here we are back in our timeline, and I said that we are going to be starting in the pre-dynastic world. Technically, we're looking at the end of the pre-dynastic with the establishment of the first united kingdom of Egypt. If you want to know more about the pre-dynastic world, that is current research, research that historians have only now started to really pay attention to. Previously, archaeologists were just for the glitz and glamour of the Egyptian kingdoms, and they would just ignore the pre-dynastic world. However, recent turn in interest to not only the everyday lives of everyday people in the ancient world, but the pre-dynastic Egyptian world have started to rise. There's a rising interest. And so there's newer scholarship about, there's a lot more scholarship, newer scholarship about the pre-dynastic world out there. But we're not going to really look at it. Instead, we're going to look at the first king of a united Egypt. Now, if you look at our period style up here, I say Egyptian, but to be more specific, this is the pre-dynastic world. I know I just said he's the end of the pre-dynastic, but bear with me, okay? We're going to call this pre-dynastic. This is titled The Palette of King Narmer, and it was meant to commemorate the united Upper and Lower Egypt. Remember, Upper Egypt, the mountains, Lower Egypt, the marshlands, and King Narmer is credited as the warrior king who, from Upper Egypt, defeated his enemies in the south, in the marshlands. This palette, it's called a palette because it's shaped like a makeup palette. Now, the Egyptians, men and women, the Egyptians wore makeup. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm going to talk about makeup right now, okay? So the ancient Egyptians, men and women of all classes, wore makeup. A common thing that you'll see in movies and stuff like that is that heavy eyeliner. That's not fake. That's real. They did wear that heavy eyeliner, and it's not just to look like, super sexy or dreamy. The thick black, which is made out of kohl, K-O-H-L, they would line their eyes because it helped against the hot glare of the sun. Basically, the line of black helped to control the intense brightness of that hot Egyptian sun. And think of it like a pair of sunglasses, almost. It's like slick Ray-Bans. Okay, so this palette is a commemorative or ceremonial palette, but it is in the shape of a typical makeup palette. And you can see right here, that little circle, that divot, that is usually where you would put the kohl and then your brush and rub it and then apply it. I say that this is a commemorative or a ceremonial one because this is way too big to be an actual makeup palette. It's 2 feet tall and it's carved of rock. So it looks like a makeup palette. It has a divot like a makeup palette. Our historians have suggested that this must have been used for some kind of a celebration, maybe a ritual, and something to do with Narmer, because here we are looking at the front and the back of this makeup palette. And we're going to start with the back, and then we're going to look at the front. Here's the back of the palette. What we see is King Narmer, and he wears the crown of Upper Egypt, and he holds a mace in his hand, in his right hand, as he holds the hair of his enemy, a man from Lower Egypt, and he's about to bash this guy's head in. Oh, how do we know that that is Narmer? There's also this guy back here. He's holding some sandals, and then we've got this guy. How do we know that's not Narmer? What about these guys? What is that vocabulary word to help us define biggest person is most important? You said it. I heard you. You said it. Hierarchic scale. So he is the biggest one here. He is the most important. He must be Narmer. And he's holding in his hand a mace. Remember we talked about maces last class with the mace is a decorative head basher inner. So he's got his mace, a symbol of authority. He's wearing a crown, which we'll get into more detail later. But we know that this is Narmer because Narmer came from Upper Egypt. And Upper Egypt is where the mountains are. And he wears this tall mountain crown. And he's holding on to this guy's head. He's going to kill him. And we know he's going to be successful because here, this animal, this falcon? This thing here? Yeah, it's a falcon. He's giving Narmer this symbol of a man with papyrus fronds. I'll get into papyrus and we'll get into this falcon here. But what is going on here is we're supposed to be reading these symbols. This is the symbol for Lower Egypt. So once he's bashed this guy's head in, this falcon, who is a god, is going to gift him Lower Egypt. We see his vanquished foes below. And we know that he is Narmer because up here, framed between these two cow-headed women, we'll talk about her again, is the symbol which, if we were to read ancient Egyptian, would say Narmer. I'm teasing you. I'm not giving you a vocab word. Here it is. Hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs, the writing of ancient Egyptians in which pictorial symbols are used to represent meaning or sounds or a combination of meaning and sounds. And that is what we see here. We see the hieroglyph for Lower Egypt, and this hieroglyph specifically, if we were to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, which, by the way, you can. There's books that you can buy to help you. When I was in 6th grade, I tried. I did not succeed, but I tried. If we were to read ancient Egyptian, the catfish that we see here in the middle, this catfish makes the sound nar. And then on either side of the catfish are these chisels, right here and right here. These chisels are the sound mer. And so when we read it, we are reading Narmer. Oh, okay. So we got Narmer, King Narmer. We know how to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs because of the discovery of a very specific and wonderful stone. It's called the Rosetta Stone. What? Like the expensive language software? The language software is named after this. The Rosetta Stone is a block of stone that was discovered in 1799 by members of Napoleon's French army as they laid siege to Egypt. It is a stele. Remember the word stele? It is a decorative stone that had been placed in a crossroads, and it outlined a very boring document. Basically, it was the tax of, it was outlining the tax laws of ancient Egyptian priests. But what's so great about it is that this ancient tax law was written in 3 languages. It was written in Greek, because by the time this was carved, the Greeks had control over Egypt. It was also written in Demotic. Demotic is a kind of basic script, not a fancy Egyptian script, but it's the Egyptian language, and Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are an ancient writing system, but they are also a very sacred writing system, and not a lot of Egyptians could read hieroglyphs. So it was provided in Demotic and Greek. What this did for us is that it gave us a system of 2 languages we knew and 1 language that we didn't, and we could translate Greek, we could translate Demotic, and through those 2 translations, we figured out the signs and symbols of the hieroglyphs. Yes! Somewhere around the fall of the ancient Roman Empire, we had lost the ability to read ancient hieroglyphs. It's a longer story. It's sad, but true, and it happens all the time. And we're going to look at a few other languages that we still don't know how to read. But fortunate for us, the Rosetta Stone provided us with these 3. A question that some students ask is, where did this Rosetta Stone show up? It was actually part of a stele that had been taken down and then used to be filler for a wall. And when Napoleon's army busted down this wall, they found this rock in it, and they were like, I think this is something important. It's now at the British Museum, so you can go check it out. Here's a museum conservator cleaning it up, and if you want to see the backside of it, it's very boring. Nothing on the back. But it must have looked something like this, and it would have been erected and outlined the tax law of ancient Egyptian priests. Okay, back to Narmer. Don't get me distracted. Okay. Palette of King Narmer. So we're reading our hieroglyphs. Now, between the 2 hieroglyphs is the figure of the sacred goddess Hathor. Hathor, she is referred to as the mother goddess. She is the mother of the pharaohs. And she is defined as a woman who wears bull horns. What? Yes, more bull horns. Humans, we have this common behavior to give bull horns to those of power. We saw it in ancient Egypt. We saw it prehistory. We saw it in ancient Mesopotamia. We see it in ancient Egypt. We saw it in the pre-world. You know what I'm talking about. I'm so excited. I can't get over this. So here we have Hathor, and framing Narmer, it is claiming him as a son of the mother goddess. She is the mother of all kings, and framing his name, she is his mother, therefore making him divine. If you had any doubt as to him being a god here on earth, his attendant is there to remind you. This man here in a loincloth is carrying sandals. Those are Narmer's sandals, because Narmer, everywhere he walks, is divine. Everywhere he walks is holy, and so he does not sully his sacred land with sandals. Does that make sense? We will often see this in art. We'll often see gods or kings and queens who are gods here on earth without their shoes on. And it's not that they didn't wear shoes. It's a visual symbol of their divinity, that they don't sully the ground where they walk, because everywhere they walk is this holy ground. So it's often used as a visual shortcut if you see him barefoot. It's also why people will remove shoes before walking into sacred areas. You don't want to dirty the sacred spot with your nasty, crusty shoes. Okay. The crown that he wears. I said it was the crown of Upper Egypt, so maybe draw this in your notes. The crown of Upper Egypt is this conical shape, and it's based on the mountains of Upper Egypt. Remember, Upper Egypt means the mountains in the south. So he's wearing the crown of Upper Egypt because he came from Upper Egypt and he's slaying his enemies. The falcon that brings him the hieroglyph for Lower Egypt is the god Horus. Horus is often, and many of the Egyptian gods will take on a human form, an animal form, or a hybrid form. Horus is one of those. He will have a animal form, a falcon, and a human form that has the body of a man and the head of a falcon. Here's another image of Horus. Horus, he is a brother or protector of the pharaohs. That is his title. So here, he's got his mother, Hathor, his brother, Horus, giving him Lower Egypt. He is divine. He is a god here on earth. He's got a divine brother. He's got a divine mother. And the hieroglyph for Lower Egypt is defined by its papyrus. Now, I also said, I'll tell you more about papyrus. Here's a picture of papyrus. Papyrus is a reed plant that grows in the marshes of the Nile in Lower Egypt. So to see the papyrus, it is an easy connection for ancient Egyptians to think, oh, papyrus reeds, they grow in the marshes in Lower Egypt. Therefore, it becomes the symbol for the name or the word of Lower Egypt. Nice, right? Here we are on the other side. Let's flip it around. So we are looking at the front. Now, it's technically called the front because this is that divot where you would place the makeup if this was used for actual makeup, which some historians think this might have, that there might have been some kind of a ceremony where this massive 2-foot block of stone would have had the eyeliner, and maybe the eyeliner would have been applied to a statue of the pharaoh, of King Narmer. It's a suggestion that many historians have brought up. Here we are. We're looking at two creatures whose intertwined necks create the divot of the makeup palette. Beneath that, we see a bull bashing through a walled city. And above that, we see, well, tallest guy in the room, Narmer. And he's walking forward to look at the dead. What? It doesn't look like Narmer. He doesn't have his upper crown on. Oh, well, actually, it's because he's wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. Remember? He just got Lower Egypt. And so the crown of Lower Egypt is defined by, a low swoop. And then this curly Q, it's not to be cute, like some kind of a butterfly antennae. No. The curly Q is a papyrus reed. So we have him wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. And if we were to look closer, here we are. There's Narmer, biggest one in the room, hierarchic scale. There's his name. Now you know how to read ancient Egyptian. Catfish, chisel, Narmer. Okay. And he's here with his attendants, and he is surveying his enemy, his slain enemies. They lay in nice, tight rows. And do you see what's between their necks? Their legs? I just gave it away. Nestled between their legs are their heads. So this is meant to show you the discipline and the ferocity, the deadliness of Narmer. There he is. Oh, look at, there's his attendant with his sandals. Wow. If we look at the center, these two creatures, they're kind of like hybrid giraffe lions, right? These long-necked felines. And their necks intertwine to create the circle of the makeup palette, but they also intertwine as a symbol of unity. Write this down. The uniting of Upper and Lower Egypt is symbolized with the intertwining of these two feline necks. So we see Upper and Lower Egypt together. We also see the connection with Lower Egypt. We know he's from Upper Egypt, and yet he's wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. And then beneath, we see him represented as a bull, right? Bull, divine, and he's bashing through this walled city, taking Lower Egypt. Now, we don't see it in this palette, but I want you to be aware of it in the future. If you see a combined crown on a pharaoh, it is a symbol of a united Egypt. So if you take the Upper Egyptian conical crown and the Lower Egyptian swoop with the papyrus reed, you are creating united Egypt. So while, yes, technically, Narmer is not wearing the united Egyptian crown, in other artworks of other kings, they will often wear this crown, which now you know how to read as I am in control of Upper and Lower Egypt. Okay, I know this went really long. I'm sorry, but I'm excited.